Hey guys, Mr. E here, and you can already tell by the screen, it's going to be a good video today. It's going to be a analytical video talking about one of the game's systems, one of its most misunderstood systems, which is the defensive economy. Health, toughness, and gold toughness. And today, my angle is going to be talking about how gold toughness breaks this game's defensive economy. This is probably a polarizing opinion, right? I know a lot of players crutch on gold toughness, and I don't mean that in a bad way. You know, a crutch is a tool that you need to use until you can walk again, right? But I find that when I have gold toughness on my team, I can play like an absolute brain dead moppet. And I think that really speaks to how this game was not designed with this system in mind in terms of its defensive economy, and how it makes it very, very difficult for Fat Shark to balance the game and throw any actual challenging, scary enemies at us. Gold toughness has led to sort of a meta, and I mean this in the sense of the dynamics between allies and the enemies, where you die in one fell swoop or you don't die at all. There is no such thing really in this game as being sort of chipped down, excepting certain havoc modifiers that can corrupt your HP or gas or something like that. No, much more likely it is that you're going to get absolutely destroyed in like 1 or 2 seconds because you didn't have your defensive layers up. And this is all sort of precipitated by the gold toughness problem and what it has led Fat Shark to have to do to overcome that gold toughness and actually damage players. Because, right, the game isn't challenging if you can't sometimes defeat players and cause them to lose all of their HP, and it wouldn't be very fun if you could just walk through every level because you're just completely invincible, right? So they do need to be actually able to like hurt and kill players, and that is where gold toughness presents a big issue. So what we need to do is we need to go back to the beginning of time and discuss how the systems for defenses in Darktide were designed initially, and then what they morphed into, and then what they finally morphed into now. Way back at the dawn of time, 2022 era, if you weren't playing back then, or if you didn't play in the beta, you might not even remember this, but in the pre-launch beta, there was a very controversial damage system. And the way the system worked was, if you look, by the way, this is gold toughness, regular toughness, and our health, right? The way this system worked was when you had, and there was no gold toughness back in the day, so when you had your full toughness, if you took a melee attack, let's say this melee attack would have done 100% of your HP, right? It would not do 100% of your HP, but you would still take 10% of that melee attack's damage directly to your health, regardless of how much toughness you had. So even if you had full toughness, you would take some chip damage. And this would happen over and over and over again throughout the course of a game, because, I mean, first of all, how often do you go through a game and not take a melee attack, right? Probably almost never. But these days, what happens is this. You have your blue toughness up, you have your regular toughness, and you take a hit, and you're fine because it protects your HP. But then you regenerate the toughness, and you can take another hit. And you regenerate that toughness, and you can take another hit. And this is how Arbites is so strong, right? You can just constantly regenerate that toughness and keep tanking hits for free. But back in the day, you would take that hit, it would hit your health directly, and you would take toughness damage. And then you could regenerate the toughness, but then you could take another hit to your health directly, right? So this was very, very difficult for players because they were just learning the game. They didn't know positioning. They didn't have a lot of tools at their disposal. Weapons and abilities were a lot less powerful than they are these days. So keeping enemies staggered back and keeping them away from you was kind of quite difficult. So yeah, it was, and like the health economy was very scarce out there. You really, really savored getting to a health station or finding a health pack because you were getting chipped down left and right. You were taking damage to your health constantly. And this is when you look back and see in the very early eras of the game, if you look at some older guides on Games Lantern or whatever for different class builds, what you'll see is a lot of them are running health curios or wound curios, and that is not because those players sucked or anything, but because in that meta, when you were taking health damage directly all the time, having more health was a valuable resource. Having more wounds is a valuable resource because eventually you will go down. You can't avoid taking damage forever. I mean, you can, but back in the day, really, you couldn't. So what this led to was, yeah, players would stack health. Now, these days, since your health is untouchable as long as you have full toughness. For the most part, you just stack toughness so that you can take some toughness damage and then instantly regenerate that toughness as fast as possible. That's the whole goal these days. So that existed up until the launch, and then this system existed up until patch 13. So let's go ahead and describe this system. This is the current system that still works with the base health bars without talking about any gold toughness abilities or anything like that. Let's just talk about regular toughness and how it interacts with your health. So we're going to take the same example of an attack that would do 100% of your health and kill you instantly, but you have toughness, right? If you are missing 50% of your toughness and you take an attack that would do 100% of your HP, exactly 100% HP, not like overkill you, but like just it would do 100 damage and you have 100 health, the game will look at your toughness bar and say, okay, you are missing 50% of your toughness. Therefore, this next attack is going to do 50% of its original damage. So it would do half of your health and damage. And that's what I've codified up here at the top. So these up here at the top are rules for how damage interacts with toughness. And this is the first rule. The percentage of the melee damage that you take from an attack to your HP directly is equal to the percentage of your toughness that is missing. So if you are missing 1% of your toughness and you take an attack that would have killed you, you will take 1% of the equivalent damage, right? And this is where like Arbites and Ogryn are so strong. Since they have so much regenerative effects to the toughness, they can keep their toughness very, very close to full or full all the time, and therefore when they do take attacks, they'll either completely shrug off the attack by not having any toughness missing at all, or if there are missing some toughness, it'll be very, very small and they'll only take a tiny bit of chip damage, and that's okay for them. They can eat that much. So that's the first rule. The second rule, though, is that there are certain attacks that can hit through your toughness, and I'm certain we've all experienced these, but there are certain attacks that can instantly erase all your toughness and damage your health. Now, normally this doesn't happen, right? Normally, that's too much damage. But there is no real hard and fast toughness gating in that way. There is a little bit of a leeway spot where when you lose all your toughness, there's a 1 second window where you will take 90% reduced damage. But if you get hit by a burster or something, the burster will do all of your toughness no matter how much toughness you have, and then it will take 100 HP and it'll corrupt 50. So you'll end up having like this much of your bar right here being corrupted off, and this much will be gone. So taking bursters is pretty scary. Same thing applies to sniper shots. Sniper shots will instantly kill all of your toughness and they'll hurt your health. And the same thing applies to crusher overheads, and the same thing applies to captains and their like big sweeping sword strikes or hammer overheads or boss overheads. And I think that's just about everything. So those are the attacks that can hit directly through your toughness, and obviously, for obvious reasons, those attacks are very scary, because if you take that hit, you are going to take health damage, even if you were at full toughness before, right? So that's a big portion of dealing damage to players, is the ability to give them this dodgeable thing where if you don't, you're instantly going to take health damage. But now we need to talk about what transpired after patch 13. So after patch 13, we introduced two new abilities: the Veteran's Chorus ability, the Veteran's Shout ability with the Augment Duty and Honor, and the Zealot's Chorus of Spiritual Fortitude ability, which just does it on its own, right? So these abilities can give you a gold toughness bar. Let's see if I can, yeah, there it is. This gold toughness bar acts differently to a normal toughness bar. So the way I want you to think of this, I think most of my audience has probably played Halo. This is like Overshield, but not quite. So when you pick up an Overshield, right, in the game, you have your normal bar of toughness, and then you regenerate an extra bar on top of that, and then it actually goes further. It regenerates, I think, 3 extra toughness bars or extra shield bars on top of your regular shields. And that all stacks up, and that just represents extra damage that you can take. And I think this is a lot of players' understanding of what gold toughness is. Because when you get a veteran who shouts and affects you with this gold toughness, what you get is you get 50 extra toughness on top of your regular toughness, right? And that toughness, you can lose it and you can regain it just like its regular toughness. And this is what sets it apart from the overshield in Halo. Because in Halo, when you pick up the overshield power up, right, that is a limited resource. You have 3 extra shield bars, but if you lose this much of the shield, you ain't getting that back. You know, it would be kind of broken if Master Chief could pick up an overshield power up and go and hide in a corner after he takes some damage and then regenerate 4 full toughness bars full of overshield. That would be completely bonkers broken. And yet, that's what gold toughness allows you to do in this game. So what is going on behind the scenes is that these gold toughness abilities, respectively, this one on the left here, the 10-second one, is Chorus of Spiritual Fortitude, and the right one, the 15-second one, is Veteran's Shout ability. These apply a buff. For the Chorus of Spiritual Fortitude, this buff is applied on each holy pulse of light, and it starts its countdown timer each time you pulse, but the last time you pulse is about 5.5 seconds into the channel time. So overall, you get about 15 seconds of coverage with this. Even the player who casts it still gets 10 full seconds of coverage after they're finishing casting it. So this buff lasts for 10 seconds after you're done channeling the ability, whenever that is. And then for Shout, it's 15 seconds from the instant that you shout. So what does this mean for the player who gets the gold buff? Well, it means that for the next 15 seconds or so, you have the ability to regenerate this gold buff at will. And this is where it distinguishes itself from like Halo Overshield or any other shields that you might have, temporary HP buffs you might have in other games, right? When you get healed by the medic in TF2, right, he can overheal you, but he can't like take his health beam off of you, and then you can't go and keep your overheal up for yourself just because he touched you within the last 15 seconds. That would be broken. Fortunately, that's exactly how broken it is in Darktide, because what can happen is, since you can regenerate this gold toughness on your own, you could be playing the Zealot with Charge. By the way, Charge regenerates 50% of your toughness on use. So what can happen is the Zealot charges in, he gets hit with a big wallop, and he loses his gold toughness, and he loses some of his regular toughness. Now he's vulnerable, right? Refer to rule number 1 up here. When we're missing a percentage of our toughness, we can take that percentage of melee damage directly to our HP. So the next hit that hits him will hurt him a lot. But fortunately, he can press his ultimate ability. And since this buff lasts for 15 seconds, and he can regenerate into gold toughness on his own, and that gold toughness is counting as part of his total toughness pool, he can regenerate that gold toughness instantly. He can get back to, maybe not, it would take him to full, but it would take him pretty close, right? So he would get gold toughness back just by pressing that button. And he could repeat that. You know, he's got multiple charges of this thing, so he could get hit again. And he could do it again and get back into gold toughness. And this is one part of the problem here, is it becomes increasingly hard to deal damage to enemies that have gold toughness on their bar, because not only is this like, you know, an extra bunch of defense, an extra 50 points of tankiness that enemies have to get through, which, like, sort of funnily, on Havoc, it's crazy impactful, because at upper levels of Havoc, you usually have about 100 toughness total, because your toughness is reduced on Havoc 40. But this is still a flat 50, so it's a huge like percentage increase in your toughness. And also on really low difficulties, where, like, I believe on Heresy difficulty, if you're playing a veteran and you have a gold toughness, or 50 gold toughness in your bar, you can get hit 3 times by like a regular enemy and take 0 health damage, because the enemies don't deal enough damage to break through it. So on lower difficulties, this is a huge number. It's literally like 50 gold toughness is like a massive boost to your survivability just by the number of toughness that is alone. And the same thing applies on Havoc, where it's a huge percentage boost to your otherwise low number of toughness. But that's beside the point. That's only one part of how broken this is. The fact that you can regenerate this flat overshield of extra damage that the enemies now have to deal to you. Let's refer to our rules again and look at these. First of all, The percentage of melee damage dealt to your HP is equivalent to the percentage of toughness that you're missing when the attack comes in. This means, when we refer to our gold toughness, that if you have even 1 point of gold toughness, you are immune to ranged attacks. Or, sorry, to melee attacks. You cannot take melee damage, because if you have gold toughness, by necessity, that means you have full blue toughness. So that says, basically, if you have gold toughness, even 1 point, if you look at your bar and it's gold, if you take a melee attack here, you will not take any health damage. Good. Awesome. That's fine. Fortunately, in order to maintain balance in the game, there are still those attacks that can hit through your toughness. So overheads and snipers and bursters, they still do what they're intended to do, and you can get overheaded and it will still kill you. So you need to be cautious around them. Just kidding. Having gold toughness in your bar prevents all health damage, period, full stop, end of story. That is the rule. This is the overriding rule down here. If you have 1 point of gold toughness, it doesn't matter how much, if you have 0.1 points of gold toughness, if your toughness bar appears gold, whatever the number is that's on there, you cannot take health damage. That is the rule. So an overhead hits you. The maximum that it can do is all your toughness and all your gold toughness, and you're left with all of your health untouched. A burster hits you, which would normally instantly nuke your toughness and take you to about half HP. Nope, it can nuke all your toughness, but it cannot hurt your HP. Same thing with a sniper, same thing with captain overheads, boss overheads, yada yada yada. The only thing that can hurt you through gold toughness is explosive barrels, funnily enough. But this is absurd. This is patently absurd, because now we have to look at the synergy between all three of these. Let's synthesize these three things right here. The fact that gold toughness prevents health damage, the fact that this buff lasts for 15 seconds, and in the duration of this buff, you can regenerate the gold toughness on your own, or other players can regenerate your toughness for you. Because we have classes in this game that can regenerate toughness like pretty damn fast, and that's a problem. Because that problem compounds the issues that we have with gold toughness and taking damage. So let's take the Arbites, for example. The humble Arbites, struggling lately, obviously, right? He's really a difficult class to play, and definitely doesn't have enough defenses. But he generates, let's say, conservatively, like 30% of his toughness every single second. Probably more close to 50%, but let's say 30%, right? So what can happen for the Arbites is he gets into a melee fight with a single enemy, and let's just say that this enemy is invincible for some reason, right? He takes a hit from the enemy. He's got a little bit of gold toughness in a bar. If we refer to rule number 1, when we have gold toughness, or we just refer to this rule, this is the overriding rule, right? When we have gold toughness, we can't take health damage. So he takes a hit from this enemy. He loses some of his toughness. Okay. He hits the enemy back, and he gets some passive regeneration from his dog and from using stamina and stuff. And he regains that, and he regains into gold toughness. Now he takes the hit again. And he regenerates that. And he takes it again. He regenerates that. And he takes the hit again. And he regenerates that. Etc. Yeah. And he does that ad infinitum. And this is basically how you play the Arbites these days. Because when you have gold toughness in your bar, if you look down and you see that bar is gold at all, you're invincible. Because not only are the enemies having to hit the gold toughness before they can get to your toughness, before they can get to your health, they have to fight the fucking salmon uphill swimming battle of actually outcompeting the Arbites' patently absurd toughness regeneration. Every second that they're DPSing you, you're just like you're just completely regenerating every bit of your toughness. Every millisecond, you are just churning out crazy volumes of toughness. Same thing applies for the Ogryn. They both have access to Confident Strike, which is 7% of their toughness on hit, which can go into, includes the gold toughness. He can use Taunt, which regenerates like 50% of his toughness every single second. He's got all sorts of stuff, like he gets 5% on every hit. He's not quite as absurd as the Arbites, but he's close. And this is all even considering if the enemies can hit you at all. So they actually have to be able to do damage consistently enough to not only get through the gold, but then to get through some of the blue, and then they can hurt their health, finally. But in the background, of course, you've got two other fucking allies, and what is the Psyker doing? Well, the Psyker puts a bubble around you, and the Psyker's also regenerating your toughness, and he gets you back into gold. And then, in the meantime, the Veteran has cooldown reduction curios, and he's actually managed to snipe 2 specials. So guess what? He lost 12 seconds off of his cooldown by killing those 2 specials. And he has a 26-second base cooldown because of his cooldown reduction curios. So when this buff is about to fall off and the enemies are about to catch a fucking break and be able to hurt you for like 1 second, nope, he shouts. When he has 1 second left on the buff duration, he shouts and the gold buff stays up for another 15 seconds. That's not even considering if there was a chorus on the field and you can just overlap these two because gold toughness can stack. So not only is this buff like, 15 seconds long, but you can then chorus when there's like 1 second left, and you can just roll that right into the next one. There's no period, there's no window where the enemies can deal any damage if you're just cycling these through constantly. And if that wasn't good enough, the fact that they can stack, if you have 2 veterans on the team and one of them shouts and the next one shouts 5 seconds later, it doesn't just say, oh, we'll just refresh the duration. No, it adds more toughness to your bar. So instead of having 50 gold toughness, you go to 100 gold toughness, which is even more absurd. That's so much HP for enemies on lower difficulties to get through, and even without even considering the frequency of this coming up and the frequency of the application of this buff, you would be golded up like 100% of the time. And in fact, that's how the game is played at high levels, is you're golded up 100% of the time. And this is like the problem here, right? Is it becomes so fucking interminably hard for the game to actually get any damage dealt to you that it has to pull some serious fucking bullshit. And this is where I want to transition over to talking about why I think this is an issue. Because I know there's players out there who are just like, oh, Mystery, this is just like your dueling sword thing. Why bother nerfing anything? Just make other stuff as good. That's not the fucking point here, Jimmy. The point is that when you have an ability like this, when you have gold toughness that exists in certain games, the game has to be designed in such a way that it can actually defeat these players, right? If gold toughness won every single fucking game, then the game would be boring as shit and everyone would just use that and just win, right? Except for like challenge run players who would challenge themselves not to. But since the assumed standard of play, especially on high levels, is to have at least 1 gold toughness provider on your team, and Fat Shark knows that, right? They have to look at their game. They play on Malice, so they play their Malice games, and they see every fucking veteran is using shout and stuff. So in order to hurt players, in order to actually give players a challenge that can defeat them, you have to be able to defeat the gold meta comps. You have to be able to break this gold toughness. You have to be able to break some of the regular toughness and then hurt the HP. And you can no longer do that by dealing damage with melee. You can no longer do that with one-shots that the players are supposed to dodge. You just have to do that with overwhelming amounts of firepower. You have to tune these enemies so that they can do damage so fast and stagger your allies and CC your allies and fuck them up in such a way that they can't keep their gold toughness full for that 1 millisecond, and that's when they can pounce and actually get their fucking damage done. Let's take a hypothetical example again of a team of 3. This team of 3 is a chorus zealot, a shout veteran, and a taunt ogren. They encounter the twins, Rinda and Roden Karnak. Rinda jumps on you and starts attacking you with a sword. If you have those 3 characters, the shout veteran, the chorus, and the ogren, you beat them 10 times out of 10. More or less, because you shout and now you have gold toughness. You can just trade melee attacks because you have gold toughness. Remember, you can't take melee damage while you have gold toughness in your bar. The second you get kind of low, you can use the chorus and hold them in place and beat them even further, and eventually one of them's going to die and now they're not a challenge anymore, right? Take that same enemy encounter. It's just the twins, but you've got a charge zealot, a executioner stance veteran, and a charge ogren. Now you don't have a way of overcapping your toughness, and at best, you can play with really fancy footwork and maybe block, but one player now full-time has to block against Rinda because if she hits you, you don't have gold toughness. You will take damage to your health on the first hit, and because her attacks are so fast, the next one is going to hit you directly, or you'll take damage to your toughness on the first hit, and the next one's going to deal damage directly to your HP. And because she is tuned in such a way that the assumption is that you'll be fighting her with gold toughness using teams, her melee attacks do like 100+ damage. So you'll get hit like 1 time and you'll nearly fucking die because of it. Because the enemies have to capitalize on the millisecond where you are actually vulnerable and actually get some damage done. Because if they don't, because if this was like the normal team from before, and like, you know, for instance, if Rinda had a really, really slow attack speed and Rodin shot you with a plasma gun, which nukes your shields and knocks you and makes you vulnerable, and Rinda doesn't manage to land an attack in the next 1 second, well, what do? You shout and you get all your toughness back and done. Now the window for the enemies to deal any damage is closed. So Rinda, as a design, has to be fucking super hyper aggressive in order to get any work done at all. They need to have these gas mines. They need to have these abilities and stuff like this that can just ignore the fact that you have toughness, or can instantly obliterate your toughness and then deal damage to you afterwards. And that poses a huge fucking problem for the teams that don't bring the gold meta, because they cannot play by those rules. They have to stay on the defensive the whole time, because if they take any damage, they'll take damage directly to their HP, and because the enemies are so highly tuned, because they do so much damage in every attack, in order to capitalize on those brief moments of vulnerability, they will kill you instantly if you let your guard down even for a second. Psyker players feel my pain here, right? When you are playing a Psyker, you are living in a Arbides world, more or less, right? You are living in a world where these classes can block or negate or just straight up face tank 95% of damage. But as a Psyker, you can get hit by a Burster, get thrown into a Poxwalker who attacks you in the back, and you can instantly die. Like die, because on Havoc it corrupts your HP. So if you lose all your toughness to a Burster and get thrown back, and then you get meleeed once by a Poxwalker, it'll corrupt enough of your HP that you're dead. And that's real fun. That can't happen to you if you're golded, so the assumption is that that's a fair way to balance the game, because the assumption is that you'll be playing with gold on your team, because everyone else fucking does it. So here, that's the problem, right? Is we are limiting the choices that you can make playing on a lot of difficulties, because when you're playing at low skill games, it makes the game tremendously easier. It raises your success rate probably by a factor of like 5 to use these gold toughness applying abilities, because players are sloppy and they take lots of hits, and that just erases the fact that you need to dodge hits. And then on higher difficulties, if you don't have it, you're going to get your shit pushed in by like 1 attack, not even considering all the chip damage that's going out. And this is going to bring me to my final 2 segments here, I guess, where I want to talk about why I'm talking about this. The reason I'm talking about this issue is because last night I played a permadeath run with an infiltrate veteran. I'm not an insane person. I was just merely paid to be an insane person. The supporter who donated to put me up to this challenge asked me to play infiltrate veteran, and they were nice enough to give me some extra lives, so I had some more attempts, and I'll be uploading the video of that the final game later today, so hopefully you can see that. But this game was incredibly intense because I didn't have gold toughness. I did have players on my team who could provide it for me, but the fact that I was playing veteran and didn't have this get out of jail free, ha ha ha, fuck you, I'm invincible for 6 seconds button on my bar was nerve-wracking, because when I'm not able to press a button and tell every enemy around me to get on the floor and walk the dinosaur for 5 seconds, and I'm invincible, and my toughness is replenished to full, and like, you know, etc., and whatever. Like, there's a million things that this buff does for you. Infiltrate does fucking none of that. I know I've ranted about Infiltrate a bunch before and how dog shit it is, but that's really not even the point. Infiltrate was basically like playing with no ultimate, more or less. And this ultimate, the Shout ultimate, would have made my life a million billion times easier. I could have done the whole run with taking 0 damage because I was playing that cautiously. But playing cautiously like that was intense. It was satisfying to think that, oh my god, I just took a big fucking hit from a gunner down the range. I need to be careful. I need to check my surroundings and make sure there's not a melee enemy creeping up on me. Because if a melee enemy creeps up on me while I'm chipped into my blue toughness, I can take a huge fucking chunk of my HP and maybe even die. If a crusher sneaks up on me or like slides past my enemies and overheads me when I don't have gold toughness, I will instantly die and I'll have to delete the character because this is a permadeath run. So like the stakes were high, and they were made higher by the fact that I knew I didn't have this thing to crutch on that would make it so that I could just like willy-nilly go out there and just like trade blows with fucking crushers face to face. I had to pick my engagements. I had to be tactical. I could not risk taking too much damage, and that was how the game used to be played. That was a very satisfying era for the game when it was much more tactical. You had to like look at this engagement and be like, oh shit, like we need to eliminate those gunners first because they are going to put out far too much damage and they're going to like suppress our firing, our aim, and all that shit. That is straight out the window now, guys. That is not how the game is played anymore. The game is now played played by stacking a bunch of gold toughness regenerations, stacking RBs and Ogrins, who just then roll through the level. And I know that some of you out there might not have that level of expertise and aren't that professional at the game, and you still lose games, and that's fine. But you will still see the style of gameplay that has been dominated, has been made dominant by this gold toughness, invulnerability, stagger everything, steamroll the level meta, way more often than you'll see anything tactical at all. Players aren't like apprehensive about approaching and going into rooms. They're just fucking blasting in there and shouting everything down to the ground and then just going ham on the enemies because they cannot be hurt during the duration of these gold toughness buffs. And that makes for a fundamentally different game than what I think Darktide was intended to be. And it polarizes the way that the enemies are designed. It makes them have to be designed to be hyper lethal in order to punish you in the brief moments of vulnerability that you actually have. And that means that if you aren't playing with these huge Matryoshka nesting doll defensive systems, then you're going to get cut to ribbons in like 1 millisecond. And that is the ultimate thesis that I have here. It's the same thesis that I've had about Dueling Sword pretty much from the beginning, is that when you attempt to balance a game around an outlier, which these are outlier abilities, they do something that no other abilities can, when you have to balance a game and overcome the OP-ness, of something, whether it be like the Dueling Sword, let's take a hypothetical weapon that can instant kill enemies, right? If you had a weapon in the game that could instantly kill any enemy, you would have to create something to challenge that weapon. And that would be an enemy that can, it can revive itself 5 times. So you'd have to, or it only has like certain weak spots so you can hit and deal damage to it all. So you actually have to like aim for those weak spots, right? That would be a way to balance that weapon and make that weapon actually have to work for something. But for everybody else, it would be a fucking nightmare. And the only reason you're getting introduced to this horrible, like, added difficulty system is because you have this one weapon in the game that needs to have something that actually challenges it. And the same thing applies to gold toughness. The only reason that enemies do, like, 1 quadrillion damage and they are super hyper aggressive and they need to throw, like, quadrillions of crushers at us in order to overwhelm us is because we have these huge defensive layers that make us nigh invincible, except for when an absolute catastrophe happens and the stars align. And by stars align, I mean the 15 crusher overheads that are coming for you align, and they murder you in an instant. So what should Fat Shark do about this? Well, I don't think Fat Shark is going to do anything about this, first and foremost. Let me be clear on that. Well, let me be clear. I'm Obama. Secondly, I think what I would want to be done would be to have Havoc have a new rule set. Have maybe even like not even like all Havoc, but maybe like if they add future levels of Havoc, like 40 to 50 or something, or 41 to 50, maybe 41 to 50, gold toughness isn't a thing. And the way this would change the balance of the game would be really sizable. You could still make the buff apply extra toughness to your bar, right? You could still, have it give you extra toughness, but this toughness would just add more base toughness. It would make your blue bar fuller. It would make it bigger. So now, if you took the same damaging attack, right, before you would take an attack that would do like this much damage, like 50% of your HP. But if you gained the blue, extra blue toughness that brought you up to this much, now when you take the attack, you'll only take this much, and that means that you have 2/3 of your overall total of toughness left, rather than the 1/2 you had before. So when you take the next melee attack, you'll only take 1/3 of the damage, rather than 1/2 of the damage, which is a smaller proportion. So this would increase, you would still take chip damage to like taking attacks, but it would still decrease the damage that you take, and obviously it would make you still have much more defenses against ranged stuff, but it would just remove this bullshit where you are completely immune to health damage, you're completely immune to overheads and one-shot attacks, and you're not able to, you could still regenerate it on your own, but you're not able to completely negate taking chip damage 100% from melee damage. You can still take damage in the way that the game intends, and I think this would be a fair way to balance it throughout the game, although I know that players would like cry if they remove this, because it's a really good crutch. Like, this is one of the strongest things in the game, and it'll allow you to completely ignore these systems of playing defensively, of dodging and blocking and all that stuff. But I think that, you know, for players who are pushing Havoc, if you want to go all the way to the top and you want to do that, you're probably really wanting to push all of your core skills to the absolute maximum, and this would be a great one to learn. This would be a great last training wheel to take off, because it is one of the most like core training wheels in the game, and I would love to see how players play around not having it. Anyway, guys, that is everything. Thank you very much for watching another Yaptide, and I'll talk to you very soon. Mystery out. Bye-bye.